Hello. Want to talk to you a little bit about stress today. I've just been out for a run, so I'm very hot and sweaty, so excuse the state of me. But I was thinking about this while I was on my run, and I did a video for you a couple of weeks ago on sleep. And stress to me is probably the next biggest factor when we're looking at our weight management and our looking after our health in general. So we focus on diet and nutrition, diet, nutrition and exercise, the main two things that people always focus on. But there are these big other things that we need to concentrate on that have a huge impact on what's going on up here that then affects our ability to stick to a diet plan or to do exercise, okay? As well as changing our hormone profile that allows food to be used differently and stored differently, okay? So double whammy effect. So I spoke about sleep, want to talk to you about stress. Along all of this, none of the diet, nutrition and exercise principles change. So you should still be exercising with us 3 times a week minimum. And you should still be following the diet principles, not necessarily 100% of the time, but the majority of the time. And if you're doing both of those and you're doing them consistently, the weight should slowly be coming off. Not dropping off with pounds a day, but slowly coming off. And you should start to see that difference. You know, the few pounds turns into half a stone, turns into 3/4 of a stone, turns into a stone, and the dress, you know, the widths, the waistline and everything starts to change. If that's not happening, if it's not happening, I could probably put my hand on heart and say you 99.9% sure you know why, because you'll know which part of your diet plan you're not able to stick to, or if your exercise is becoming consistent, you'll know why that is. If for any reason you genuinely don't know why the weight's not coming off, 3-day food diary, that's all I need. What you're eating and drinking, every single thing, weights and amounts for 3 days, and I'll be able to pinpoint for you what's going wrong. So if you need any help on that, contact me. Keep saying this, but I'm here to help you if you need it. But I'm going to assume that you've kind of got into the rhythm there and you know what you're doing, okay? So if that's an incorrect assumption, flag it up, let me know, and I'll help you all I can. But assuming you've got the basics of that, like I say, I want to focus on these other areas. So stress, and the effects of stress are the same as sleep deprivation. Remember I spoke to you before about unbalanced hormone levels, that fight or flight response, that being in your sympathetic nervous system where you're on edge all the time, that inhibited digestion, that increased fat storage, increased inflammation, down-regulated metabolism, that general feeling of being irritable and snappy and susceptible to stress even more. So you're already stressed, you're susceptible to situations that would normally be water off a duck's back and suddenly become a major event. Poor decision making, increased appetite to accompany nicely the increased fat storage, and feelings of low blood sugar as well. So I went over those in the sleep deprivation, and the effects of stress are no different. So what we need to do is, excuse me, just look through this. We need to, so flick a slide, identify our sources of stress. And the way I look at stress is like a bucket, okay? And we've all got natural levels of fluid, water, whatever you want it to be inside our bucket. And different additions of water are placed into this bucket from different sources. So we have nutritional stresses. When we are not eating correctly, when we're chucking a load of, quite frankly, crap into our bodies, and we're on top of that not giving it the things it needs to function properly, the coenzymes, the micronutrients, the vitamins, the minerals, if they're not provided, we are automatically putting our body under some form of stress. So that's what I'm calling nutritional stress. Eating foods that our body has a hard time dealing with because they're not normal. They're not normal to us as we've evolved throughout the years. We're things like trans fatty acids that our body just simply doesn't recognise and has a hard time dealing with, but also not giving it the things it does need. Nutritional stress. We have relationship stress, some of us do. You will know if you have a relationship stress with your partner, with a friend, with a parent, with a child. You will know if you have relationship stresses, if that's something that's causing you to lay awake at night. We have toxic stresses, and I will cover this in more detail on another video. But the amount of toxins we're exposed to on a daily basis is in the millions. It's a scary number. When I touch this table, when I touch the wall, when I breathe in the chemicals off this picture, there are hundreds, thousands, millions of them. our body deals with them very well, and our liver is a fantastic organ for doing that. But it is another stress that is put under our body. So we've got that as another pouring of water into the bucket. We've got toxic stresses. We've got physical stresses. So we've got exercise. Exercise is a stress on your body. Now, that's not saying we shouldn't do it, because we can do it in a smart way, the type of exercise that we do, but also it has benefits that outweigh the risks in this instance. Okay, so being completely inactive is a stress in itself, but just be aware that exercise is a stress. And this is where, if we exercise excessively, so every day, several times a day, we can put an undue stress on our body. Or if we're not exercising wisely for our age and our size and everything else that we're dealing with. So exercise, physical stress. We have emotional stresses as well, and again, that can be caused from anything. Could be maybe emotional stresses at work, if we feel stressed by our workload or by our bosses. Can be emotional stresses internally. Can be, if we're replaying stories in our head, or we're dealing with situations that we're turning into dramas rather than dealing with the facts of the situation. We're adding tangents onto it and creating it into a bigger drama. We get very stressed about things that we don't need to. So we've got emotional stresses. And we've got financial stresses. That's a very big one for some of us. I was made redundant a few years ago, and as the major breadwinner in the family, contributing something like 70% to the household income, suddenly having that pulled away from me, that rug from under my feet, that was a huge financial stress. Everything had to change. And when things like that occur in our life, these are big stresses. So the first thing I want you to do is have a think about your bucket, basically. Have a think about the cups of water that are pouring the different stresses into your bucket. What are they? Because the first step in all of this is identifying what your stress sources are. You cannot do anything about them if you don't know what they are. Okay. So, identifying the sources. Once we've identified our sources, the next very important step is understanding what you can do to influence them and what you can't. Now, some of our stress sources have components of them that we can do absolutely nothing about, yet we spend an inordinate amount of time worrying about them. And the sooner we build a resistance and accept that there are some things we can't change, the better for our stress levels, the better for our health. So there's an element of identifying the stresses that we have and understanding which we can influence and which we can't. Planning action on the areas that you can influence is hugely liberating and an amazing step in stress relief to begin with. So when you've found a source of stress, for example, if we take the financial one, so the financial one of using redundancy and suddenly having your income slashed as an example, because I've lived through it, one of the first things I did was gather information. We are animals that like to have a prediction and response situation. So we cannot predict the future if we don't have any information. And if we can't predict what's going to happen, we have no ability to elicit a response that's appropriate for the situation. So the first thing I did in my redundancy situation was gather information from everywhere. All of my ingoings, all of my outgoings, where was every bit of money going out, where were all of our, luckily my partner was still working, how much was he earning, could we get money from elsewhere, getting a big picture of our finances, then able to predict with a certain wage stopping what the future held. So what did the immediate future hold for us? How was there a deficit in our incomings and our outgoings? Was there any way of managing that? And then elicit the appropriate response, which for us was to slash a load of our outgoings so that the incomings and the outgoings were able to match each other just for a short period of time until I was able to get another job, and then we can start to build those outgoings back in again. But you see here how, and in that instance, it did make me feel hugely better, because you're out of that I'm out of control and I don't know what the future holds for me situation. You're building in prediction and response, you're making positive steps, and suddenly you're able to handle the stress better. Okay, allowed me to sleep better at night, knowing that the money we had coming in was enough to pay our essential bills, such as the mortgage, and to feed us. That's all any of us need, really, although we think we need a lot more. Okay, so understanding what you can do, what you can't do anything about, and starting to make small steps, if nothing else, towards doing the things that you taking action on things that you can. Another huge one, and it's so simple and it sounds really quite basic, well, extremely basic, or we forget about so much, is breathing. And obviously we breathe. We wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here talking to you if we didn't breathe. But we don't breathe efficiently, and we don't breathe effectively, and we don't breathe how we were designed to breathe. So many of us, especially when we're stressed, breathe very can't get my words out to say, very shallowly from the chest, when we should be breathing very deeply from the diaphragm. Okay. So next time you're in a stressful situation, can be especially good when you're in a kind of panicked situation. If something's happened all of a sudden and you've got some kind of acute stress, take yourself to a quiet place and just take 10 deep breaths. Place one hand on the diaphragm, so the bottom of your rib cage, just at the top of your tongue. And basically, as you breathe in, the idea is to make that belly as big as it can possibly be. So your diaphragm is a muscle at the bottom of your rib cage. When you're breathing out, it's domed like this. And as you breathe in, it flattens in order to expand the rib cage, okay? So as you're breathing in, you're flattening that diaphragm and you want to push your belly out as hard as you can, okay? So you're making that your diaphragm flatten, and you're breathing out, expanding that rib cage to make as much room as possible for the air and the oxygen to get in. So 10 really big, doesn't matter if you breathe in through your nose or your mouth, it's a personal thing, but getting a big, I would encourage you to breathe in through your nose if you can, but whether you breathe out through your nose or your mouth is a personal thing. Breathing in through your mouth tends to give more of a gasping sensation, which can induce panic in itself. But whether you breathe out through your nose or your mouth is completely up to you. Okay, so 10 really big deep breaths in somewhere quiet, and just see how at the end of the 10 breaths, you just do it now when you finish watching this video, how everything will seem a lot calmer. You may have heard me speak before, and we'll cover this a bit more later, about when we're reactive, we're in one of the back parts of our brain, a reptilian or mammalian brain. And when we're responsive and we're in control and we're logical, we're cognitive, we're in our human brain at the front here. That action of breathing takes us into our parasympathetic mode and brings us back into this frontal lobe where we are a lot more rational, a lot more human. Okay, so breathe, please. Take time out regularly as well. Go on walks, do some meditation, do some time out exercises. Spend time with people friends of yours that we would consider radiators rather than drains. And you probably know what I mean by that, but the type of person you come away with feeling lifted and fulfilled, and they've added some happiness of some description to your life, rather than the type of friend who we can spend time with and you come away wanting to slit your wrists. And I'm not saying we should, halt all of our friends if they fit that description, but there are ways of distancing yourself from them and spending more time with the radiators if you can. Okay, so like I said, going on walks, especially as it starts to brighten up, you've got lighter evenings now. Get out with your family in the evening when the sun starts to come out, when the sun's around in the evening. Meditate, taking 10 seconds out just to do some deep breathing that I spoke about. So 10 minutes to do some deep breathing in kind of a meditative form will help you hugely. And spending time either on your own or with friends, it is a great way of relieving stress too. And that deep breathing technique for just 10 seconds can really help you when you're at that ceiling point. Can help you as well when you're about to make a decision that really is not one you want to make. And when I say that, I'm thinking of things like you're in a really stressful situation, you've had an argument with someone, hopefully not something, and you reach to the cupboard to grab a bar of chocolate or the barrel of biscuits or whatever. If you can get yourself away from that cupboard, just go to a different room, say, I'll come back to that in a minute and I'll have the chocolate or the biscuit if I want it, but I'm going to take 10 seconds, 10 really big breaths and deep breaths first, and then I will go back to the cupboard and see if I make the same decision. And a lot of times there are times where you may go back and still make the same decision, but I bet you there will be times when you will go back and you'll say, actually, I'm calmer now and I don't want to do that. Give yourself the chance. You're just adding, I don't know, however long it takes you to do 10 deep breaths, 20, 30 seconds, 40 seconds. You're just taking that time out to come into that cognitive, rational part of your brain, go back, and the decision may be very different. Okay, it won't always be, but a lot of the time it will. And remember, we're making small steps. So if we can get the breathing in, and instead of 10 times out of 10 that decision is to go and eat the chocolate, now it reverts to 7 or 8 times out of 10. That's still a step in the right direction. So we're looking for those little wins all the time to add up to a cumulative effect. Okay, so stress. Identify what your sources are. Forget about the sources you can do nothing about. Start to take action about the ones that you can. Doesn't have to be big action. As soon as you start to make the smallest steps, you will feel in control. You'll have a prediction and response in your environment that you need, and you will start to feel calmer. Breathing, get walks out with friends, walks on your own, spend time on your own, meditate, just chill the hell out. And it will have a huge impact on both your sleep quality, which we've spoken about before, but your hormone profile in general. So things will be a lot calmer for you. We won't have that increased appetite. We won't have that increased fat storage. We won't have that decreased metabolism. All of these things we don't want are vastly improved when we start to be a lot less stressed out. Okay, I hope that helps. Any questions, fire away. And I will shoot you another video tomorrow and probably another one on Friday before we finish. All right, see you later. Bye.